new parents, that moment the little human arrives, the world just seems to flood you with
Oh,
advice.
doesn't it just everyone's got an opinion?
From grandparents to, random people online. And nowhere is it more intense than around feeding.
Definitely. Feeding is ground zero for advice overload.
And breastfeeding especially, it gets painted as this like beautiful, effortless, perfectly natural thing. You just do it.
Right. That's the story we're told. Instinctual, easy.
Except for so many people, it's profoundly challenging.
It really can be. And when it doesn't just click, that weight of guilt,
Yeah.
it can be absolutely crushing.
Yeah, it's a heavy burden, isn't it? This whole societal narrative, this expectation that if you really want to breastfeed, it should just sort of happen instinctively for both of you.
And when reality hits, pain, maybe low supply, a baby who just won't latch properly, that feeling of having failed at something so basic, so fundamental.
It can feel incredibly isolating. Exactly. That pressure, that feeling of inadequacy, it's so real. And that's actually why we chose this particular source for a deep dive today.
Ah,
We've been looking into a book by Byam-Cook. She's a trained nurse and midwife, spent decades specializing in breastfeeding support.
right. I know the one. What to expect when you're breastfeeding
Huh.
and what if you can't. That's it, isn't it?
That's the one.
What's immediately striking about her approach, I think, is just how practical and, well, grounded it is. She's absolutely pro-breastfeeding, wants to help women succeed, no question. But she specifically aims her advice at mothers who are having problems. That's her focus.
Yeah, her mission, and kind of ours in this deep dive, is to give concrete step-by-step solutions drawn right from her actual experience.
And the goal is removing that guilt,
Right.
that sense of failure, whatever feeding method you end up using.
Exactly. She spent her career, in the trenches, actually helping women get through real obstacles, not just watching the ones who found it easy.
Makes a difference.
So our mission here is to unpack the key knowledge, the insights from her book, to give you, the listener, some really actionable advice.
It's about understanding the mechanics, isn't it? How feeding actually works.
Yes, and how to tackle common issues head on. And ultimately, reinforcing what's most vital. The goal is just nourishing your baby.
Making sure they're happy, healthy, thriving, however you feed them.
However you feed them. And she makes it really clear, doesn't she, that bottle feeding, whether it's express milk or formula, is completely valid, often necessary.
Absolutely. It's not just a breastfeeding manifesto. It's a guide to support mothers through all the complexities, whether that means exclusive breastfeeding, combo feeding, or exclusive bottle feeding. It covers the lot.
That perspective is just so welcome, especially in a space often dominated by that breast is best message, which, while well-intentioned, can sometimes inadvertently harm mothers who are really struggling.
Yeah, it can create more pressure, more guilt.
So drawing from her experience, her advice, let's dive into preparing for breastfeeding. Where do we start?
Okay, yeah, preparation. The romantic idea is, like you said, you just need your breasts and your baby. Simple.
The natural ideal.
But the book is very realistic. It acknowledges that actually some basic equipment can genuinely make things easier, more comfortable.
Right. Makes sense. Essentials like comfortable nursing bras.
Yep. She suggests ones with zips or hooks just for ease of access. And breast pads, obviously, to manage leaks. That's pretty standard stuff.
Okay.
But here's where she offers a really practical, maybe even surprising bit of advice right up front.
Oh, yeah.
She strongly recommends having bottle feeding equipment ready from day one.
Really? Even if you're determined to breastfeed?
Yes. And the reasoning is purely practical. It's not about lacking faith in breastfeeding.
Okay.
It's that a breastfed baby needs to learn to take a bottle of express milk at some point.
Why is that?
Well, inevitably, there'll be times you need to be away for a few hours. Or maybe you plan to return to work down the line.
Ah, right. And if you wait until you absolutely need them to take a bottle?
Exactly. It can lead to total refusal, loads of stress. Having the gear means you can introduce a bottle, maybe just once a week. Nice and early. Get them used to it.
So it's about building in flexibility, preparedness, not assuming failure.
Precisely. It's about options. The book details other useful bits and pieces, too.
Like what?
Well, beyond bras and pads, she mentions nipple creams. Says they can be useful for prevention or helping healing if things get sore. Though she does note there's some debate about how effective they really are. And alternatives, like just using a bit of breast milk itself, or even, get this, grated raw carrot.
Grated raw carrots. Seriously?
Apparently. She mentions it as a sort of traditional remedy in some places, one of those slightly odd bits that sticks with you.
Definitely. What else? Pumps.
Yes, breast pumps. Covers manual versus electric. Notes manual ones can be a bit bulky sometimes. Suggests you might hire one initially, or buy.
Yeah.
Recommends Medela as often being very effective.
Okay. And nipple shields. I hear about those a lot.
Yeah, another tool for problem solving. She sees them as incredibly helpful for specific issues like really sore nipples or if you're having major latching difficulties.
Like with flat or inverted nipples, maybe?
Exactly that. Again, she recommends the Medela brand, mentions they come in 2 sizes, and they have that important cutaway section.
Why is that cutaway important?
So the baby's nose can still touch the breast. It maintains that sensory connection, that closeness, even with the shield.
Gotcha. And breast shells, what are they for?
They're mainly for mums who leak a lot
Mm.
between feeds. You wear them inside your bra, and they catch the milk.
Can you use that milk?
She says you can collect it for later use, yeah. But obviously, you'd need to be super careful about hygiene if you're going to feed it to the baby.
Right. And all this stuff, where do you get it?
Chemists, baby shops, big department stores usually have most of it.
Mm.
Pretty widely available.
So preparation is a mix of comfort items and practical tools. What about actually preparing your nipples? Soreness is such a huge fear.
It really is. And there's that old idea, isn't there, that you need to sort of toughen them up beforehand, rubbing them with a rough towel or something.
Yeah, I've heard that.
The book says very firmly, absolutely unnecessary, potentially even counterproductive.
Okay, so no toughing up needed.
No. She stresses that the vast majority of sore nipples are caused by an incorrect latch or poor positioning, not because your skin is inherently too delicate.
Ah, okay. So the best prevention isn't physical, it's technique.
Exactly. Getting the positioning right from the very start is highlighted as the #1 defense against nipple pain. Creams can help soothe or protect if they get sore, sure, but they won't fix the root cause if the baby isn't latching on properly.
That's such a key insight. Focus on technique, not pain tolerance. What about diet during breastfeeding? Seems like there are endless rules.
The book tries to cut through a lot of that dietary anxiety, actually.
Good.
It emphasizes that healthy eating is important, yes, but mainly for your energy levels and your general well-being, which, in turn, helps support milk production.
So it's about fueling yourself.
Yeah. Expect to eat and drink more than usual, regularly through the day, not necessarily strict meal times. And don't worry too much about initial weight gain. Your body's using a ton of calories to make that milk.
Okay, fuel yourself well. Less worry about specific forbidden foods.
Mostly, yes. However, she does note that some foods can potentially change the milk flavor, which might unsettle some babies.
Like what kind of foods?
Things like excessive citrus, loads of garlic, really hot spicy stuff like curries. But the key word is possibly. Many babies won't react at all, especially if you ate those things during pregnancy.
Right. So how do you know if a food is affecting the baby?
Observe your baby. That's the advice. If they get unusually unsettled, really windy, maybe have mild diarrhea, or just fuss at the breast after you've eaten something specific, it might be the culprit.
And then what?
Experiment. Avoid that food for a week or two. See if things improve. Then try reintroducing it cautiously and see if the reaction happens again.
Makes sense. Trial and error. And how quickly can food affect milk?
She reckons it probably takes at least 4 hours for something you eat to potentially show up in your milk.
Okay. That observational approach feels much more manageable than just banning everything. What about fluid intake?
Your body usually tells you. Thirst naturally increases when you're breastfeeding, so listen to that. Drinking enough is definitely important for keeping your supply up.
Any specific drinks to watch out for?
Well, caffeine is generally okay in moderation, but too much might make some babies restless. Alcohol. An occasional drink is fine, but not excessively. It takes about 4 hours for alcohol to clear your milk supply. Fizzy drinks are probably best avoided, can cause indigestion in the baby sometimes.
And the classic old wives' tale, Guinness. Does it boost milk supply?
Huh? She addresses it. Admits she hasn't personally seen it work miracles in her practice, but hey, if you're struggling with supply, she basically says it's harmless to try if you fancy it.
Practical tips, myth-busting, focusing on mom's needs seems like a solid start. Let's move on to understanding how breastfeeding actually works, the mechanics.
Right, this section really lays the foundation for troubleshooting later. The core principle, as the book puts it, is simply giving food to your baby.
Obvious, but important.
Yes. And while breast milk is often seen as ideal, she immediately follows that by saying formula is also excellent nourishment. And she repeats that central message. Don't feel like a failure if breastfeeding doesn't work out for you.
That anti-guilt message is so strong throughout, isn't it?
It really is. She acknowledges that, yeah, some mothers find it easy, but many others need significant, skilled help to get it established.
Why does she think so many women struggle then, if it's supposed to be natural?
Often, she says, it just comes down to not getting the right help at the right time. When you're faced with overwhelming issues, feeling vulnerable, exhausted, it's so easy to start blaming yourself.
Hmm.
And she directly challenges that idea that just trying harder guarantees success. She uses this really powerful analogy, compares breasts to eyes. Some people need glasses to see clearly, right? Sometimes breasts just don't function optimally no matter how hard you try. It's biology, not a reflection of your desire or effort.
That completely reframes it, takes the blame away.
It does. But then she quickly balances that. She reassures that for the vast majority of mothers, problems are usually down to incorrect feeding technique, and they can be resolved with the right help.
So there's hope. It's often solvable.
Exactly. She gives the example of a mom in agony with nipple pain, and just adjusting the baby's position slightly makes the pain vanish instantly. It shows how crucial technique is. It's not luck, or how clever the baby is.
That's incredibly encouraging, knowing problems are often fixable with knowledge. What about breast size? That causes so much anxiety.
Total myth. She is crystal clear. Breast size has absolutely zero connection to milk production capacity.
Really? Zero?
Zero. Size is about the amount of fatty tissue. Milk is made in milk cells spread throughout the breast tissue. Completely different things.
So you really can't tell by looking?
Nope. She says she's been amazed by the amount of milk from really small breasts, and conversely, been surprised when larger breasts have struggled with supply. You just cannot predict it based on size.
That's a huge weight off many minds, I bet. So how does the milk actually get made?
It's made in specialized cells, kind of spread throughout the breast, and then stored in little sacs.
And that first milk, colostrum.
Yeah, colostrum. It's that thick, often yellowish milk you produce in late pregnancy and for the first few days after birth.
Key features.
Small amounts, but absolutely packed with goodness, nutrients, and loads of antibodies.
What kind of antibodies?
She clarifies this. They protect against infections that you, the mother, are already immune to. So it's like giving the baby a direct boost of your existing immunity, not generic protection against, say, any old cold virus floating around.
Got it. Then the mature milk comes in. When does that happen?
Usually around day 3 or 4 after birth. It's triggered by hormonal shifts. Progesterone drops after the placenta is delivered, and prolactin, the milk-making hormone, rises.
And you feel it.
Oh, yeah. Your breasts usually get noticeably larger, firmer, sometimes quite uncomfortable, or even properly engorged for a bit.
And the absolute cornerstone principle of breastfeeding, the one everyone talks about.
Supply and demand. Simple as that. The breasts work on this basic feedback loop. They supply what the baby demands.
So the more milk the baby takes.
The more milk the breast will make in response. It happens automatically as the baby grows and needs more.
You don't know the exact amount, though, do you?
No, never the exact volume. But the best signs that supply is meeting demand are a baby who settles well after feeds, sleeps reasonably between feeds, and, crucially, is gaining weight properly.
And breasts adjust.
Yeah, they adjust over time. If you consistently make too much, production slows down. If the baby needs more and feeds more often or more effectively, supply increases. She adds that efficient breasts often manage to keep a little bit left over after a feed, allowing for variations in how much the baby takes each time.
That flexibility is built in. What about the letdown reflex?
The letdown. That's the mechanism that actually controls the flow of milk. It releases the milk from those storage sacs when the baby sucks effectively.
Do you feel it?
Some mothers feel a definite tingling or a rushing sensation. Others feel absolutely nothing. It varies. But she notes it's quite sensitive. Stress, tension, pain can all inhibit it, make it harder for the milk to flow.
Okay. And foremilk versus hindmilk, that's another one that causes worry.
Yeah, lots of confusion there sometimes. Foremilk is the watery milk right at the start of a feed. It's got important stuff in it, but it's lower in fat. Hindmilk comes later in the feed. It's thicker, richer, much higher in fat.
And that's the important bit for feeling full.
Exactly. The hind milk provides the bulk of the calories and helps the baby feel satisfied, full, content.
Yeah.
Getting enough hind milk is really key for weight gain and settling well between feeds.
How long does it take to get to the hind milk?
It varies a lot. It depends on things like how fast the mother's letdown is, how well the baby is positioned, how effectively they're sucking.
So how can you tell if your baby's getting enough hind milk? You can't see it.
No, you can't see it. The book stresses you shouldn't even try to judge it by looking at the milk. The best indicators are the baby's behavior and growth.
Like,
How long do they settle and sleep between feeds? Are they generally content? And again, the bottom line, are they gaining weight properly? If a baby seems unsettled, constantly hungry, and weight gain is poor, then you might suspect they aren't getting enough of that fatty hind milk.
and the author's advice if that happens.
Adjust the feeding approach. Specifically, let the baby suck longer on the first breast before you even offer the second one. Encourage them to really drain that first side more effectively to get to the richer milk.
Does she think breasts automatically balance it?
Interestingly, no. She states her view that breasts don't just automatically sort out the fore-milk-hind milk balance. It's the combination of the baby sucking effectively and being positioned correctly that ensures they get what they need.
Which brings us right back to technique being absolutely critical. Let's talk about actually doing a breastfeed, getting that technique right.
Exactly. The book really hammers this home. Correct technique isn't just about comfort, it's fundamental. It makes feeding effective, prevents problems. She contrasts doing an orderly feed, where you think about technique, versus just sort of,
Bunning him on the breast, as she puts it.
yes, exactly, just hoping for the best.
She also points out that baby cues aren't always just about hunger, are they?
No, and this is so key for breaking those cycles of frustration we talked about. Babies don't only wake up because they're hungry. They'll often take a feed if it's offered, even if they woke up for some other reason.
Right.
And a really common issue is babies falling asleep before they've actually had enough milk. Leads to those short, frequent feeds, maybe poor weight gain. Winding can be a hassle too.
So crying doesn't always equal feed me, and sleeping doesn't always equal I'm full. Getting the position right seems crucial here.
It absolutely is. Because, as she says over and over, incorrect positioning is the #1 cause of sore nipples. She totally dismisses the idea that some babies just have a strong suck that causes pain.
It's the latch, not the baby.
Almost always, yes. It's about how they're latched on. The key elements of the ideal position she describes are, well, first, baby on their side, body really well supported. A pillow helps.
Okay.
Their mouth needs to be level with your nipple. The nipple needs to go straight into the baby's mouth so the baby faces the breast directly, not coming at it from an angle.
Head position.
Head tilted back just slightly. Mouth opening really wide, like a yawn.
And taking in enough breast tissue.
Yes, taking in enough of the nipple and the areola. And finally, baby's nose should be touching the breast and their chin pressed firmly into the breast.
You mentioned enough nipple and areola. How do you judge what's enough?
She clarifies it depends on the mother's nipple size. If you have tiny nipples, the baby should ideally take all of the nipple and all of the areola into their mouth.
Wow, the whole thing.
Pretty much. If you have larger nipples, then they should take all of the nipple and as much of the areola as possible. The main goal is getting that nipple far back into the baby's mouth. That triggers the right sucking reflex, makes it comfortable for you and effective for them.
That deep latch. Essential. How can you tell during the feed if the baby's actually getting enough milk?
You look and listen. Is the baby sucking rhythmically, with pauses? Can you hear or see swallowing? Does the baby seem content, relaxed? Do they feel heavier in your arms as the feed goes on? Does your breast feel softer, maybe a bit emptier afterwards? Though she does say breasts rarely feel completely empty. Baby detaching on their own when finished is another good sign.
Okay. And then looking at the bigger picture. Overall, after the feed, over time.
The really reliable indicators are, does the baby settle well after most feeds? Do they sleep reasonably well between feeds? And the absolute gold standard, are they putting on the right amount of weight according to their growth chart?
Comfort for the mother is important too, right? These feeds can take a while.
Absolutely. Find somewhere comfy to sit. But she also cautions against setting up just one feeding chair in one room and only feeding there. It can get really lonely. Use pillows for support behind your back, under your arm to hold the baby up. And she mentions trying different feeding positions too beyond the standard cradle hold.
Like what?
Football hold, side lying in bed. These can be really useful in specific situations, like if you're feeding twins or have a blocked duct or just trying to encourage a tricky latch. Different angles can help.
Okay. Moving on to winding and settling. They go hand in hand with feeding, don't they? Whatever method you use.
They really do. The book's very matter-of-fact about wind. Babies swallow air when they feed. It happens. Leads to wind, discomfort. Some babies seem to suffer way more than others, and it doesn't seem strictly linked to being breast or bottle fed, just individual variation.
When should you wind them?
Definitely always at the end of a feed,
Hmm.
but also during a feed. If the baby starts getting squirmy, uncomfortable, or stops feeding suddenly, the tummy might just be full of air.
How long do you need to try for?
Usually if a burp's coming, it'll happen within a minute or two. If not, keep trying for a bit longer, but she suggests maybe a maximum of 10 minutes after a feed.
And if they don't burp but seem okay?
That's fine for now,
Yeah.
but just be aware, they might cry later when you lay them down. If they do, it's almost certainly wind.
So if they cry after being laid down?
Her advice is simple. Assume it's wind. Pick them up, try winding again.
The book also talks quite a bit about swaddling as a settling technique.
Yes, she's quite keen on it. The basic why is that it makes the baby feel secure, cozy, protected. It mimics that snug feeling of being back in the womb.
Any other benefits?
A practical one she highlights is keeping baby warm in winter without piling on loads of blankets. She even jokes it might reduce your heating bills.
Huh. Always practical. How does she describe doing it?
Says a midwife can show you, or your own mom probably knows how.
Yeah.
The basic idea is using a big square sheet, cotton or flannelette, maybe 90 centimeters square. Fold down one corner, lay the baby on the crease, neck level with a fold, then wrap one corner over the baby, tuck it underneath them. Do the same with the other corner, wrapping it over and tucking it securely. Snug, but not too tight.
And a really crucial safety point with swaddling.
Absolutely vital. Linked directly to safe sleep and caught death research. Always place a swaddled baby down on their side or their back, never on their tummy. If you put them on their side, use a rolled-up towel or small blanket behind their back so they can't roll onto their front.
Okay. Side or back. Never tummy. When do you stop swaddling?
Usually around 6 weeks old, she suggests, or sooner if the baby starts getting really agitated by it, fighting against having their arms restricted.
Yeah.
She acknowledges some babies just hate it from day one.
Settling the baby after feeds, that's often the biggest challenge, isn't it?
It truly is.
Yeah.
The general approach she suggests is, first, try settling them in their designated sleep spot, Moses basket, crib, pram. If they're awake but not actually crying, she says leave them for a few minutes. See if they settle themselves.
Okay. And this leads to that piece of advice that many parents find really difficult.
The do nothing step. Or rather, the leave them for a bit step.
Yeah, leaving a crying baby for up to 10 minutes initially.
Yes. She's quite direct about her reasoning here. She argues that many babies only learn how to fall asleep by themselves if they're left to cry for a short period. Picking them up instantly every time they cry might actually teach them that crying gets them picked up, potentially making them more upset in the long run when you try to put them down.
That definitely goes against a lot of parental instinct.
It does. But she offers balance. She says, look, if leaving your baby to cry for 10 minutes never works, if it just causes prolonged distress for everyone, then stop doing it. It's not worth the upset in that case.
Okay, so what other settling techniques does she suggest? Either before trying the leaving method or if it doesn't work?
The standard things. Check the nappy, definitely try whining again, gentle rocking. She also suggests offering a dummy if you think your baby is sucky and just needs comfort.
And if none of that works?
If you've tried whining, rocking, dummy, maybe leaving for a bit, and they're still really distressed, then they might genuinely be hungry. Offer another feed. If they take it and settle, well, that was the reason.
The book also details a specific lap method for settling really distressed babies.
Yes, this is presented as a technique for when a baby is really distraught, maybe overtired, and nothing else seems to be working. She says it can help them achieve a deeper, more permanent sleep and can actually be less stressful for the parent than endless walking or rocking.
How do you do the lap method?
You sit down comfortably. She suggests having company if you can. Put a pillow on your lap. Lie the baby on their tummy on the pillow. Turn their head to one side. You can offer a dummy here too. Then you pat their back firmly and rhythmically, about 1 pat per second. Consistent rhythm.
Does it work straight away?
She says don't be discouraged if they cry initially. The crying should lessen with persistent rhythmic patting. Keep going.
Sounds like a classic technique. What about using a dummy generally? Where does she stand?
She sees it as a perfectly valid tool, especially for those sucky babies who seem to need comfort sucking to settle, but aren't actually hungry. She contrasts it quite positively with the situation where a baby uses the mother's breast as a dummy constantly, which can be exhausting and lead to sore nipples.
So use it purposefully, not just sticking it in whenever they cry.
Exactly. Her recommendation is use a dummy if your baby needs that extra comfort to settle, and you can't easily settle them without one. Specifically, use it to help them get to sleep when they need to sleep.
What are her rules for dummy use?
Only use it if you can't settle them without one. Only use it to help them get to sleep when it's sleep time. Do not use it just to stop them crying during other activities like a nappy change. And she notes it's unlikely to be needed in a moving pram or buggy, as the motion usually does the trick.
And hygiene is critical with dummies.
Absolutely essential. Dummies must be sterilized regularly or washed very frequently. And she gives a very strong warning linked to cot death research. Never suck the dummy yourself to clean it, especially if you're ill. Big risk of passing on germs.
Okay, let's shift to the first few days after birth, a critical period for establishing feeding.
Right. The book starts with a timing of that very first feed.
When should it happen?
Ideally, within about an hour of birth. Still on the labor ward, hopefully with some midwife help. But, she says, it's also totally fine to wait until you're settled on the postnatal ward if you're exhausted, or the baby just isn't interested straight away. A midwife should help guide you on timing.
And the first 24 hours seem particularly important, depending on the baby's behavior.
Yes. She describes two main types of babies in that first day. The hungry, wakeful ones who feed readily, and the very sleepy ones.
What if the baby is sleepy?
Midwives might not be overly concerned initially if the baby looks otherwise healthy. However, if the baby seems jittery, which is a sign they really need food, their blood sugar might be low. The midwife will likely do a quick blood test to check glucose levels.
And if it's low?
Low glucose means you must wake the baby and get them to feed straight away. If the glucose levels are normal, waiting a little longer might be okay, but she advises consulting a pediatrician if there's any doubt at all, especially if the sleepiness persists.
And she shares some key observations from her own experience about sleepy babies not feeding well.
This is a really crucial point she makes. Babies can be sleepy for lots of reasons. Maybe mom had pain relief in labor, maybe jaundice is starting. And these sleepy babies might not wake up enough or might not take enough milk even if they latch on briefly. She's also seen moms not realize quite how long the baby has gone without a proper feed, or that failed attempts don't really count as intake. And here's the critical bit. A baby who goes too long without enough food can become too weak and apathetic to actually suck effectively, even if their blood glucose reading is normal.
How would you spot that?
A classic sign is the baby cries, wanting to feed, latches on seemingly well, but then just takes a few sucks and falls fast asleep again. They just don't have the energy to keep going.
That insight lethargy from lack of fuel, not just a medical issue, is powerful. What's the recommended intervention if a baby is too weak or sleepy to suck properly?
If they're too weak to feed effectively at the breast, they will likely need 1 or maybe 2 feeds given by cup or bottle, just to get some energy back into them.
That might worry moms trying to establish breastfeeding, though.
She acknowledges that. It can feel disruptive, but she argues it's absolutely necessary sometimes. The priority has to be getting milk into the baby to revive them so they have the strength to breastfeed effectively later on.
Does she prefer cup or bottle in this situation?
She compares them. Notes that cup feeding can be slow, quite tiring for an already weak baby, and it's really hard to know exactly how much they've taken. Bottle feeding, while maybe more controversial for breastfeeding purists, makes it easier to measure the intake and can be less tiring for the baby.
And here she makes a very direct point, challenging some common fears based on her own experience.
Yes, she's very firm on this. Based on decades of practice, she believes that giving a few initial feeds by bottle is extremely unlikely to prevent establishing breastfeeding later, despite the widespread fear of nipple confusion or teat preference.
So getting milk in is the priority.
Absolutely. Get milk into the baby, give them strength. She's seen countless babies get supplemental bottle feeds early on and then go back to breastfeeding perfectly happily once they have the energy.
That directly contradicts advice many parents get. She uses case histories to really illustrate these points, doesn't she? Makes them very real.
They do.
Yeah.
Let's look at case history 1. Caroline Banks, she had twins, George and India. India was small, had low blood sugar, really struggled to latch. Midwives correctly started giving her cup feeds of formula. The author agreed, said it was necessary.
Okay.
Hospital was considering readmitting India, but the author visited them at home. She found that once she helped Caroline physically shape her nipple to make it easier for India to grasp, and made sure the positioning was spot on. India latched perfectly, fed well at the breast, and didn't need any more cup feeds.
So the key takeaway there is some babies need specific help with the mechanics of latching. And getting those timely feeds in, even formula by cup, keeps their energy up so they can latch once the technique is sorted.
Exactly. Then there's case history 2. Helen Long and baby Jack. Jack basically couldn't latch effectively for 2 whole days after birth, got no other milk in that time. He became really anxious, visibly lethargic.
2 days is a long time.
It is. Midwives eventually gave him a cup feed. Then, a well-meaning but misguided midwife spent an hour and a half at 2 a.m. trying desperately to get him to latch, just exhausting everyone. The author visited, assessed the situation. Jack had had less than 60 milliliters of milk in 3 days, was developing jaundice. He was simply too weak to suck effectively anymore.
Sounds like a really critical situation.
It was getting there. The author's direct advice was, give him 2 or 3 cup or bottle feeds immediately. Restore his energy. She was confident that once he was stronger, he'd breastfeed. Helen chose bottles so she could see exactly how much he took.
And did it work?
Yes. Jack took the bottle feeds well. Helen expressed her milk to keep her supply going. Jack's energy picked up. His jaundice cleared. He was discharged from follow-up. And that very same evening, he was back happily breastfeeding. No more bottles needed.
Wow. That case powerfully supports her point, doesn't it? That prolonged lack of milk makes a baby temporarily unable to suck, but bottle feeds to restore energy don't have to prevent later breastfeeding.
Absolutely. And it also highlights, in Helen's case, she had large, flat nipples. The author helped her learn how to shape them, which was key to Jack being able to latch once he had the energy. It shows that interplay. Baby's energy, mom's anatomy, skilled technique.
Okay, one more case.
Case history 4. Joanna Harding, also with twins, Lucy and Alicia. Lucy latched great from the start. Alicia really struggled. She was cup-fed for several days. Joanna stayed extra days in hospital trying everything to get Alicia to breastfeed. Despite all the effort, Alicia just didn't manage to latch consistently or effectively. Ultimately, the decision was made for Alicia to be bottle-fed. Joanna continued to breastfeed Lucy and expressed milk for her too.
So this case shows that sometimes it just doesn't work out for one baby, even with interventions, even with twins.
Right. And the author's main point here is, you should not feel guilty if that happens. Bottle feeding is a perfectly valid, loving way to feed your baby. She does add a reflection, though. Perhaps if Joanna had alerted the midwives earlier, specifically to Alicia's poor sucking, not just the difficulty latching, the underlying issue might have been identified sooner.
Which brings us nicely to avoiding problems and common issues in those early days. Sore nipples comes up again as a major one.
Yes, she keeps returning to it because it's such a frequent reason for mothers stopping breastfeeding when they didn't want to. She just reiterates the main causes again. Incorrect latch or positioning, and feeding for excessively long periods as a result of that poor positioning, which traumatizes the nipple. It's very rarely just delicate skin.
What are her simple, clear rules again to prevent sore nipples?
Rule 1. Make sure you get a correct latch every single time you put the baby to the breast. Don't accept a painful latch. Take them off. Try again. Rule 2. Initially, in the first few days, don't feed for too long on each side. Colostrum feeds are naturally small. Babies don't need long sessions then.
And she gives those very specific timing guidelines for the first few days. This might surprise some people.
It might, yes. It differs from strict feed on demand, however long it takes. But she's very clear on why she advises it. Day 1, just 3 to 5 minutes per breast, per feed. Day 2, increase slightly to 6 or 7 minutes per breast. Day 3, maybe 8 to 10 minutes per breast.
And after day 3?
From day 4 onwards, feeds can be unlimited in duration. Go by baby's cues. But ideally, she suggests aiming for a maximum total feed time of around 40 minutes per session. Even then.
That feels quite prescriptive for the first few days. What's the rationale? Why time it?
She explains it's only for those first few days. The purpose is purely preventative to stop the mother's nipples getting really sore while she's still perfecting her latch technique and the baby is learning to feed efficiently. Once the technique is good and feeds naturally become shorter and more effective, you don't need to time them anymore.
Okay, so it's like temporary training wheels for your nipples.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. She also advises against missing feeds, especially early on.
Why is that important?
Skipping feeds, particularly at night in the early weeks, can really confuse your breasts and potentially reduce your milk supply just when you're trying to establish it based on the baby's demand.
Right. And another key preventative measure she recommends, even if things seem okay, is expressing milk early.
Yes, she suggests expressing once or maybe twice a day during that first week.
What are the benefits of doing that?
Several. It gives your breast extra stimulation, helps build supply, gets them used to emptying fully. It also builds up a small stash of expressed milk useful for emergencies or for practicing with that bottle later. And helps your breast cope if the baby suddenly starts demanding way more milk later on, maybe after a sleepy phase like jaundice wears off.
So it's proactive, building supply and flexibility. Where do you keep that early expressed milk?
Just in a sterile bottle. in the fridge for now. She goes into more detail on expressing and longer-term storage later, but for this early stage, fridge storage is fine.
Okay, let's talk about coming home from the hospital. That transition can be a shock.
It's a massive change, isn't it? You go from having nurses and midwives around, help on tap, to suddenly being largely on your own. The book really emphasizes how much difference having practical help at home makes to a new mom's confidence and just settling in.
And rest. She stresses rest is absolutely crucial.
Yes, birth is physically draining for mom, for baby. She contrasts today's really short hospital stays, sometimes just hours, with the past, where mums might stay up to 10 days. That allowed proper time for physical recovery and getting feeding established.
Lack of rest has consequences.
Definitely. She directly links lack of rest to tiredness, which then negatively impacts milk supply. And she suggests that the common baby blues around day 4 might be just as much about sheer exhaustion as it is about hormone shifting.
That's a compassionate take. She's also very firm on managing visitors in the early days.
Very firm. Calls having too many visitors a big mistake. Plain and simple.
Why? What's the harm?
It's just exhausting for the mother. It disrupts the baby's crucial rhythm of feeding and sleeping. You end up with an overtired, maybe overhungry baby, and potentially very unsettled days and nights follow.
So her advice is,
be deliberate. Keep visitors to a minimum in those first few weeks. Agree on a set duration for visits with your partner before they arrive. And this is important. Empower your partner to politely but firmly ask people to leave when time's up. She reassures that most people do understand that a new family needs space and rest.
good advice. What about where the baby should sleep? Another hot topic.
She acknowledges the different views, parents' room versus baby's own room. But she says the absolute #1 safety factor is that the baby is within earshot, especially at night.
And safe positioning.
Always. Baby on their back or side, never on their tummy. Reiterates that link to Cod-Delter's research. If you place them on their side, use that roll towel behind their back for support.
She also considers the parent's sleep quality.
Yes, if you're a really light sleeper, all the normal baby grunts and snuffles might keep you awake unnecessarily all night if they're right next to you. Using a baby monitor in a nearby room might actually lead to better sleep for everyone.
And the partner's sleep?
Consider their needs too, especially if they have to go back to work.
Yeah.
If mom is breastfeeding, the partner often can't help much with night feeds anyway, so maybe disturbing their sleep unnecessarily isn't ideal, unless, of course, they really want to be involved.
What's her take on co-sleeping, sharing the bed?
She notes it's generally considered safe unless a parent is a very heavy sleeper or under the influence of alcohol or drugs, of course. But she also points out that a warm, well-fed baby is usually perfectly happy in their own safe space, like a Moses basket or crib. She cautions against getting into the habit of bringing the baby into your bed just as a quick fix for settling, because it can become a long-term habit that's hard to break later.
And daytime sleep, where should that happen?
Initially, she suggests keeping the baby near you during the day so they get used to normal household sounds, phone ringing, doorbell, etc. Avoid creating total silence upstairs at first.
And if those noises start disturbing them later?
Then yes, consider moving daytime naps to a separate, quieter room. She suggests maybe only sleeping the baby in their own bedroom at night initially to help them learn the difference between day and night. And a very practical tip. If your baby always wakes up the second you try to move them out of the car seat after a nap, just leave them sleeping in the car seat for a bit longer.
Wow.
Don't stress about moving them immediately.
Sensible. Room temperature, another thing parents worry about.
The house should feel warmer than usual, yeah, but not crazy hot like hospitals sometimes feel. She suggests around 20 Celsius, 68 Fahrenheit, is comfortably warm. Cooler is okay too. She really advises against obsessing over exact thermometer readings. Use common sense. Check the weather. See what baby's wearing.
What are the main risks?
The risks are if the baby gets far too hot or freezing cold. You check their temperature by feeling their body, chest, or back, not their hands or feet, which often feel cool anyway. Their core should feel pleasantly warm. And remember, babies get cold faster than adults. They're smaller, don't move as much.
Help in the home is obviously a massive boost.
Huge. She praises modern partners for being much more involved, cooking, shopping, nappies, emotional support. Big change from past generations. She also really recommends involving your own mother, or maybe grandmother, if that's an option and a good relationship.
Why Granny?
Ideally, they can help out initially or when your partner goes back to work. She notes that while their advice might seem a bit old-fashioned sometimes, It often works incredibly well just because of their age and experience.
She shares a personal story about this, doesn't she?
Yes, even as a trained midwife herself, she relied heavily on her own mother for practical help, like settling her baby and learning the value of sometimes letting a baby cry for a bit. Her conclusion: Granny sometimes knows best.
What about hiring help, like a maternity nurse?
Discusses it as an option. Pros: they're qualified, experienced, can help establish a routine, free you up to rest, help with night feeds. Cons: you need to be really clear about their duties beforehand. Are they just focused on the baby or helping mom too? Need flexibility with start dates because babies are unpredictable. And there's a risk of getting someone who's maybe a bit bossy or tends to hog the baby, which can undermine your confidence or bonding.
What should a good maternity nurse do, according to the book?
Teach you practical skills, dressing baby, recognizing cries. Help establish feeding and routine by guiding, not forcing. Discourage overstimulating the baby. Actively help you rest, handling nappy changes, winding, settling after feeds. Bring baby for night feeds. And crucially, boost your confidence as parents.
And what should they not do?
Force a really strict, inflexible routine. Be bossy. Take over completely, hogging the baby between feeds. Undermine you or other health professionals helping you.
District midwives and health visitors are the official support system.
Right. The midwife visits for the first 10 days or so, then hands over to the health visitor. Ideally, the midwife visits daily at first, checking on both mom and baby.
Any potential issues with health visitors she mentions?
One potential issue she raises is that some might rigidly follow the standard growth charts when assessing the baby, rather than using their clinical judgment about whether the baby is actually thriving overall, looking happy, alert, meeting milestones, etc.
She gives an example of this.
Yeah, she mentions seeing mums get really panicked by health visitors because the baby's weight gain deviated slightly from the line on the chart, even if the baby was clearly fine otherwise. Her advice: if you or the health visitor are genuinely worried about weight gain, see a doctor or pediatrician for a proper assessment. Don't just rely solely on the chart number causing anxiety.
Feeding twins presents extra challenges.
Definitely. She stresses how vital it is for the mother of twins to prioritize her own self-care, getting enough food, enough rest, and basically putting everything else on hold as much as possible. It's demanding.
What's the initial feeding approach, especially if there are latching issues?
If latching is tricky at first, she advises feeding one baby at a time using standard holds. This lets you really concentrate and get the technique right for each baby individually. Then, once that's working, you can graduate to feeding them simultaneously.
And how do you feed twins at the same time?
The recommended way is using the football hold, one baby tucked under each arm, supported by pillows. Sitting up comfortably in bed or on a sofa usually works best.
She notes twins are often born a bit earlier or smaller.
Yes, and potentially weaker suckers initially. Because of this, they might need some bottle feeds early on, expressed milk or formula, just to make sure they get enough calories to grow and thrive. If you do need to supplement, she stresses expressing your milk every 3-4 hours, day and night, is crucial to build and maintain your supply.
What about getting twins into a routine?
One twin might just be a better, quicker feeder than the other at first. Trying to force them onto the exact same schedule might not be possible initially. You have to decide if the effort is worth it, or if they just have slightly different needs for a while. Usually it gets easier to synchronize them as they get a bit older.
And hygiene is extra important with twins.
Meticulous hygiene, yes, because the risk of passing infections between them is higher. So really careful hand washing between nappy changes before preparing bottles, of using them, etc. She also suggests considering sleeping them separately if one twin consistently wakes the other one up.
Okay. Assessing a baby's well-being often boils down to weight gain, doesn't it?
It does. The book reiterates that weight gain is generally the single best indicator of whether a baby is getting enough food and developing well. However, she immediately adds that crucial caveat. Babies are individuals. They don't always follow those chart lines perfectly. And not following the chart exactly doesn't automatically mean they aren't healthy.
She lists some things that can affect weight readings, too.
Yes. Things like, was the birth weight measured and recorded accurately? Was the birth weight itself maybe influenced by mom's diet or the placenta, meaning it doesn't reflect the baby's true growth potential? A small baby born to large parents might catch up later. A large baby born to small parents might naturally slow down. Are the scales being used accurate? Are you using different scales each time? All these can cause variations.
So how often should you actually weigh a baby?
After the first 10 days, assuming the baby is healthy and gaining, She recommends weighing no more than once a week
Why only weekly?
because daily weight fluctuates quite a bit, depending on when they last fed, had a re or poo. A 3-ounce feed adds about 90 grams instantly, so daily weighing can be misleading and cause unnecessary anxiety. Midwives weigh more frequently in the first 10 days than the health visitor gives you the growth chart book for tracking.
What's the normal pattern of weight change early on?
Expect a loss of maybe up to 10% of birth weight in the first few days. That's normal. They should start gaining around day 4 or 5 and be back to their birth weight somewhere between day 10 and day 14.
And after that, the expected gain.
From about day 10-14 onwards, a healthy average gain is roughly 150 to 210 grams. That's about 5 to 7 ounces per week, up until they're about 3 months old.
She mentions that weekly gain can be uneven, though.
Yes, definitely. You might see only 4-ounce gain one week, then maybe 10 or 12 ounces the next. Don't panic about the week-to-week variations. Look at the overall picture. Is the baby content, are they generally following their curve on the chart over time?
And when should you seek professional help about weight?
If you feel genuinely worried about your baby's weight gain, or if the health visitor expresses significant concern, then yes, the advice to consult your doctor or a pediatrician for proper assessment.
Okay, let's dive into some common feeding problems you might actually encounter with the baby. A core message seems to be, crying isn't always hunger.
This is probably one of the most vital things for new parents to grasp. Interpreting crying is hard. She lists reasons a baby might cry other than hunger. Being overtired, overstimulated, having wind, suffering from colic, needing a nappy change, or even crying because they're trying to get to sleep but keep getting picked up every time they fuss.
Describe that frustrating cycle of endless feeding she talks about.
Right. It's the scenario where the baby cries. Mom thinks hungry, offers the breast. Baby feeds for maybe a few minutes, often falls asleep. Mom puts baby down. Baby wakes up crying again within minutes. Mom thinks still hungry, offers the breast again, and just goes round and round.
Why isn't it working?
Because the baby is likely crying for a completely different reason. Or they're falling asleep before getting a proper satisfying feed because they're overtired or just comfort sucking. Or they're getting overstimulated by being constantly picked up and put on the breast.
How does she suggest breaking that cycle, especially if it's gone on for hours?
First, recognize that what you're doing isn't working. Then, go back to basics. Check the nappy. Try winding really well. Then try those settling techniques. Swaddling, maybe a dummy, perhaps trying the leave for 10 minutes approach, going for a walk or car ride. And crucially, that lap method, tummy down, rhythmic padding, is specifically recommended for settling a really overtired, frantic baby.
And how do you know when crying is actually hunger?
If you have honestly tried all the other settling things, winding, rocking, dummy, lap method, nappy check, and the baby is still distressed, then yes, they might really be hungry.
So offer a feed then.
Yes, offer a feed. But, she advises, only if it's been at least 2 hours since the start of the last feed, unless there's a medical reason like jaundice requiring more frequent feeds. Feeding much more often than every couple of hours, especially early on, isn't usually necessary long-term and can mess up supply regulation and stop you getting into any kind of pattern.
She also busts the myth that a baby only sucks if they're hungry or getting milk.
Yes. Clearly states this is wrong. Babies have a powerful sucking reflex. They'll suck on anything for comfort, finger, dummy, breast. Just because they're sucking doesn't automatically mean they're hungry or even getting any milk.
What about a baby who seems to be refusing the breast? Crying or pulling off during a feed? The book breaks this down by likely cause, based on behavior.
This is super practical for diagnosing the issue. She links different behaviors during the feed to potential problems.
Okay, like what?
Cause 1. Incorrect positioning or latch. Baby cries or pulls away right when mom tries to lash them on, especially if she pushes their head instead of their shoulders, or brings them to the breast at a funny angle, or doesn't shape the nipple. Makes it hard, frustrating for a hungry baby.
Makes sense. Cause 2.
Milk flow too fast. Baby latches okay initially, but then cries, gags, splutters, pulls away almost immediately after the milk lets down. Seems distressed, panicked by the fast flow.
Okay. Cause 3.
Milk flow too slow, breast feels empty. Baby feeds well for a bit, but then starts crying, fussing, pulling off towards the end of the feed, even though they still seem hungry. Suggests the flow has slowed right down, or the breast is pretty much empty for their needs right then.
Cause 4.
Discomfort, like wind, colic, or reflux. Baby feeds for short bursts, but keeps crying, squirming, pulling off frequently throughout the feed. Seems genuinely in pain.
And cause 5. Unexplained fussiness, maybe in an older baby.
Yeah, this is for babies who have been breastfeeding fine for weeks or months, then suddenly get fussy. They might latch okay, but pull off mid-feed, arch their back, maybe drag the nipple. She suggests possible causes could be changes in mom's diet or lifestyle affecting milk taste, citrus, garlic again, maybe stress, intense exercise, or could just be a temporary developmental phase. Advice is to look at recent changes in your diet lifestyle first.
That's a really useful diagnostic guide based on how they're behaving. What if the baby just physically can't or won't suck efficiently?
The behavior she describes here is a baby who latches, maybe sucks a few times, then just falls asleep, or sucks really feebly, fluttery sucks, clearly not transferring much milk.
Reasons for that.
Could be they've gone too long without food, so they lack energy. Could be jaundice making them sleepy. Maybe they're overdressed and too warm, making them sleepy. Could be they're not latched deeply enough. Or maybe the mother's nipple is just too large or firm for the baby's small mouth right now and needs shaping help, or expressing might be needed. If the baby can't suck effectively, mom has to express milk to keep her supply up.
Jaundice is mentioned again here, common problem.
Very common. Mild jaundice usually shows up days 3 to 5, clears by day 10. Yellow tinge to skin and eyes. Caused by excess bilirubin, the baby's liver can't process fast enough yet. Treatment, if needed, is often phototherapy in hospital lying under special lights. Doesn't hurt them.
And the impact on feeding is key.
Yes, jaundiced babies are often very sleepy. They feed less often, less effectively. So you need to actively wake them up to feed them. Try feeding in a cooler room, take off some clothes, change their nappy mid-feed to stimulate them. She stresses. Encouraging feeds is vital for them. It's not being cruel.
What if jaundice develops or gets worse when you're home?
Tell your visiting midwife straight away. It can be harder to spot in home lighting. Call the midwife if you're worried it's worsening or if it wasn't checked properly before discharge. Severe jaundice needs a blood test to check levels and rule out other causes like a UTI. High levels need hospital phototherapy. And sometimes, if they're just too sleepy to suck well at the breast, they might need expressed milk or formula via bottle or cup to help flush the bilirubin out faster.
What about a sleepy baby in general, not just due to jaundice?
If a baby is naturally sleepy, but still wakes regularly enough on their own, feeds well when they're awake, and gains weight, okay, that's usually fine. If it's temporary from jaundice, it'll pass. The problem is when a baby is too sleepy to feed properly, and as a result, they are not gaining weight. That's when you need to actively encourage more feeds, linking back to the advice for poor weight gain.
Which, again, is the key indicator of successful feeding.
Exactly. Weight gain is the bottom line. If your baby seems content but isn't gaining weight as expected, you have to encourage them to eat more.
What should you do?
Wake the baby at least every 4 hours during the day to offer feeds. Ensure a correct, deep latch every time. Use those tricks to keep them awake during feeds, cooler room, fewer clothes. If the baby seems hungry but still isn't gaining well, she advises offering extra milk, expressed breast milk, or formula after the breastfeed as a top-up. If you do all this for a few days and they're still not gaining well, consult a doctor for a full medical check.
Milk allergy or food intolerance from mom's diet. Revisited.
Yes, as a potential cause of discomfort or poor feeding. Reiterates. Most foods mom eats don't affect the baby, but some might. If your baby is regularly unsettled after you eat something specific, try cutting it out for a couple of days. See if there's a big improvement. If yes, probably best to avoid it while breastfeeding. Common triggers mentioned again. Citrus, curry, garlic.
Do you need a doctor for this?
If it's just one or two common things, probably not. But if you feel you need to cut out lots of foods, like all dairy, she strongly advises seeing your GP or a pediatrician first. Get a proper diagnosis and guidance. Don't self-diagnose major allergies.
Colic. Parents hear this word a lot. Often misused.
Often misused, yes. Her definition. True colic is physical discomfort from severe abdominal pain. Affects about 1 in 4 babies, equal opportunity for breast or bottle fed.
Symptoms.
Baby cries intensely, draws legs up to their tummy, looks like they're in real pain, doesn't settle easily after feeds, might be hard to wind, doesn't necessarily happen after every single feed, can be just evenings or all day.
How is it different from reflux? Symptoms sound similar.
They can be very similar. Difficult to tell without medical assessment. See your GP for diagnosis. They might do tests.
What can you try for suspected colic?
Over-the-counter remedies like gripe water, Infocol, Colief effectiveness varies hugely baby to baby. A doctor might prescribe an antispasmodic drug. If bottle feeding, trying different bottle feeds sometimes helps if it does. Maybe it was just trapped wind, not true colic. Using a dummy for comfort between feeds can help. And crucially, Don't feed within 3 hours of the start of the last feed if you suspect colic. Give the tummy time to digest. More milk might make it worse. And that lap method, tummy down, rhythmic patting can be very soothing.
Reflux seems potentially more serious.
Can be confused with colic, yes, but often has a bigger impact on feeding and contentment. Definition. Milk coming back up from the stomach.
But, and this is the crucial point, she stresses again, not all reflux babies actually vomit noticeably.
That's vital. So what are the signs if they're not vomiting? Baby starts feeding eagerly, but gets distressed or cries as the feed goes on. Consistently takes only small feeds, wanting to feed again in less than 3 hours. Cries after feeds or even during. Won't settle when laid flat. Only seems comfortable when held upright for ages. Might bring up more than just a tiny posset. Symptoms can look a lot like colic.
How is reflux diagnosed then?
Consult your GP. They'll likely refer you to a pediatrician. Pediatrician might treat based on obvious, severe vomiting. But if there's no major vomiting, they might need tests like a barium swallow or pH probe test to confirm severe reflux.
She includes a case study, Jonah, illustrating this non-vomiting reflux.
Yes, it's powerful. Mom felt like a total failure. Baby thrashed, screamed during feeds, wouldn't settle unless carried upright for hours. Doctors initially dismissed reflux because he didn't vomit much. Claire Byam-Cook suspected a biological problem, reflux or allergy, not a feeding technique issue. Pediatrician did tests, diagnosed severe reflux, prescribed medication. Huge improvement. Mom felt immense relief knowing it wasn't her fault.
Yeah.
Really drives home that point. Not all reflux babies vomit.
Bowel problems are mentioned briefly, too.
Yes, a tight anal sphincter muscle can cause baby to cry and strain a lot, even when passing soft poo. Needs a pediatrician to diagnose and treat. Simple dilation procedure. GP might not be familiar with it.
Fresh.
Common yeast infection. Affects mom and baby, often after antibiotics. Signs. White patches inside baby's mouth. Can't be easily wiped off. Sore, itchy, maybe shiny nipples from mom.
Yep.
Both need treatment with antifungal medicine from the GP.
Can you keep breastfeeding with thrush?
Yes, but meticulous hygiene needed. Sterilized dummies, bottle teats if used, anything that goes in baby's mouth.
And finally, dehydration. A clear warning sign.
Yes. Signs baby isn't getting enough milk and might be getting dehydrated. Very few wet nappies, fewer than 6 in 24 hours after day 5-6. Urine is dark yellow, strong smelling, lips look dry, the fontanelle, soft spot on head seems sunken. If you see these signs, the baby must get more milk urgently. Seek advice.
Okay, let's switch gears completely now and focus specifically on bottle feeding. The book gives this area proper attention too.
It does. Treats it as a skill requiring knowledge, not just add water. Covers equipment, hygiene, preparation thoroughly.
Let's start with equipment for bottle feeding. Essentials versus nice-to-haves.
Bottles are essential, obviously. Sterilizers are highly recommended for convenience and reliability, but she does say not strictly essential. You could manage with an old container and sterilizing solution, or just boiling things in a pan. But proper kit makes life easier.
So the kit's about ease, but means more clutter.
Pretty much. Her advice is start minimally, buy more if you find you need it. Sticking to one brand can be helpful as bottles, pumps, sterilizers often fit together. A vent is given as an example.
What's on her essential list for bottle feeding?
About 6 250 milliliter bottles, 6 teats to go with them, a bottle brush for cleaning, a sterilizer of some kind, a plastic jug, a plastic knife or spatula for leveling the formula powder, and sterilizing solution or tablets if you plan to use the soaking method. Basically enough bottles for 24 hours, plus a spare.
And the bottles themselves. So many types out there.
Loads of brands work fine. Sometimes babies prefer one type over another. She mentions a vent popular, wide neck is easy to fill, but some find the teats a bit stiff. She personally quite likes the tall, thin bottles. They fit lots of different teat brands. Downside is the narrow neck makes tipping powder and messy, so she suggests mixing formula in a jug first, then pouring it in. Also mentions Playtex with disposable liners. You only sterilize the teat then, but you have to use Playtex teats.
And the teats. Different flows.
Yep, different shapes, sizes, flow rates, slow, medium, fast. Materials, silicone or latex. Flow rate is often down to baby's preference. Medium flow is usually a good place to start.
How do you know if the flow rate is right for your baby?
Aim for a feed to take roughly 20 minutes. If baby drains the bottle much faster, try a slower flow teat. If it's taking ages, baby's getting tired or falling asleep before finishing, flow might be too slow.
Can you adjust the flow?
For latex teats only, she describes carefully enlarging the hole with a hot pin. Cautions about burning your fingers. Doesn't work for silicone teats.
Sterilizing bottles. Absolutely critical. She explains why.
Yes, the rationale is important. Young babies are vulnerable to germs. Milk is the perfect breeding ground for bacteria. They multiply incredibly fast in it. Sterilizing kills these germs, prevents tummy bugs. She addresses the standard advice to sterilize for at least 6 months.
What's her take on that time frame?
She suggests it's probably safe to use non-sterilized items if they wash perfectly and used immediately, maybe after 6 months. Her logic. Babies put non-sterilized fingers, toys in their mouths anyway. But, she stresses, washing has to be meticulous.
So why the strict rule for bottles? Why sterilize them?
Because bacteria multiply so rapidly, and any milk residue left inside a bottle, it can cause anything from mild wind to severe tummy infections needing hospital treatment. Using a bottle that's just washed but not sterilized immediately after washing might be okay, and Pixie bacteria don't have time to multiply. But leaving even tiny milk traces in an unsterilized bottle for later use is risky.
How should you dry sterilized item?
Use a freshly laundered cloth, clean paper towel, or just let them air dry on a clean rack. A duty cloth or surface just recontaminates them. She also notes that U.S. dishwashers often run hotter and might sterilize, but standard U.K. ones usually don't get hot enough.
And washing before sterilizing is non-negotiable.
Absolutely. Sterilizing doesn't clean. Rinse bottles right after use. Wash thoroughly in hot soapy water. Use a dedicated bowl, not the kitchen sink, for better hygiene. Use that bottle brush, get inside, outside, in the ridges. Squish the teats under soapy water to clean inside them too. Rinse everything really well with clean water, then put them straight into the sterilizer wet. Don't dry them first. Keep the bottle brush clean too.
What are the different sterilizing methods she covers?
4 main ones. Steam sterilizers quick, about 10 minutes. No chemicals, generally easy. Microwave sterilizers work like steam, but need a microwave, less portable. Sterilizing solution, soaking, good for occasional items if mainly breastfeeding, or for travel. Use any non-metal container, submerge items for minimum 2 hours, change solution daily, can chap hands. Larger soaking units exist too. Boiling old school, but works in an emergency. Immerse items in cold water, boil for 10 minutes. Stay sterile in the water with lid on.
Okay, what about the formula milk itself?
Lots of brands work well. No single best one. Suggest picking the one the hospital uses or one friends recommend. If a formula doesn't seem to agree with baby, sick, mucousy, refusing it, she advises don't just keep switching brands endlessly. Talk to your doctor. Could be something else, colic, reflux. Discuss special formulas like cow's milk free, only if there's a strong family history of allergy. Your doctor advises it. Don't self-diagnose.
Making up the feeds needs cooled boiled water.
Yes. Always use cooled boiled water. Follow the instructions on the formula tin exactly.
Right.
Level scoops using the leveler provided or a clean knife. Add powder to water. Mix, gently swirl, or gentle shake. Don't make it too frothy.
Water rules.
Okay. Use cooled boiled tap water. Avoid bottled mineral water. It's for adults. Avoid softened water. And never reboil water that's already been boiled.
Storing made-up feeds.
Made-up formula lasts 24 hours in the fridge. Throw away anything older. Never save a half-finished bottle for later. Baby saliva contaminates it. Traveling. Keep bottles cold in fridge or freezer bag with ice pack. If traveling where water isn't safe, boil bottled water before use too.
Warming the milk. Necessary.
Cold milk is perfectly safe if baby's used to it, but warm milk is generally considered nicer. Methods. Bottle warmer, jug of hot water. Microwave is safe, is done carefully. Don't overheat. Destroys nutrients, risk of burns. Experiment with timing based on milk volume microwave power.
Any tips for night feeds?
Thermos of hot water upstairs, pre-measured powder, or milk stored cold in a freezer bag. Practical tip. Vary milk temperature slightly sometimes so baby doesn't get too fussy about it being exactly right.
How long should a bottle feed take, ideally?
Aim for about 20 minutes. Much faster might mean they lose the pleasure, gulp air. Much slower means baby gets tired, might fall asleep before finishing. Play around with teat flow rates if needed.
Winding bottle-fed babies.
Same as breastfed. All babies different. Some swallow lots of air, need frequent winding, others hardly need it. Follow baby's cues. Wind when they seem uncomfortable, or at the end.
What if a bottle-fed baby just doesn't drink the recommended amount on the tin?
If they're not drinking the exact amount, but they're happy, content, gaining weight well, that's absolutely fine. Some babies just prefer little and often, even with bottles, like at the breast. However, if they're not drinking enough and have poor weight gain, then it's likely due to some physical discomfort making feeding hard. Could be colic, milk intolerance, reflux, that tight anal sphincter thing. Usually not serious health-wise, but impacts weight and family life. If it's severely affecting weight gain or causing lots of distress, definitely see a doctor.
The book then specifically tackles bottle refusal, a really tough problem.
Acknowledges it's common, very difficult, especially if you need baby to take a bottle, maybe for returning to work. No easy answers, No single fix works for all.
Her best solution is prevention.
Yes. Strongly advises preventing it by offering a bottle, expressed milk or formula, regularly, maybe weekly, starting before 3 weeks old. She firmly believes this occasional early introduction won't cause nibble confusion for a happily breastfeeding baby.
But if refusal does happen later, what can you try?
Several strategies. The controlled starvation method sounds harsh, but means setting aside 24 hours, maybe longer, where only the bottle is offered. No breast, no solids. Needs parental determination. Reassures a healthy baby won't starve themselves. They'll take it eventually. Advises checking with GP first for peace of mind.
Other things to try.
Try different bottles, different teats. Preferences vary. Vary milk temperature, maybe warmer. Change feeding position. Sit baby upright on your lap, not cradled like at the breast. Helps prevent panic from faster flow. The distraction method, catch their attention with something, then quickly pop the teat in, relying on that automatic suck reflex.
She also briefly revisits expressing if baby can't feed well initially.
Yes, just reiterates, even if baby struggles to latch or suck effectively at first, keep expressing. It maintains your supply. And she reassures most babies will happily go back to the breast once they're stronger. Shares her own son's story fed via ventilator, happily breastfed later. Seen many 2-bottle-fed babies revert happily.
Okay, the final section deals with the decision not to breastfeed or to stop.
Yes, discusses the process if you choose not to start or decide to stop later. You need to talk to medical staff about managing drying up your milk supply.
What are the options for stopping milk production?
Some doctors might prescribe tablets. The other option is letting nature take its course. If you do that, milk still comes in around day 3-4. Breasts get engorged, painful, for at least 2 days until supply signals stop. Takes another few days to reabsorb the milk. Can be very uncomfortable, risk of mastitis. Only advised if no time for gradual weaning. Most painful if you had loads of milk.
So gradual weaning is preferred.
Strongly recommended by the author. Less painful, lower risk of engorgement mastitis. You drop one breastfeed every few days. Let your breasts adjust slowly. Speed up or slow down as needed. But going too fast definitely risks mastitis.
She notes that weaning onto a bottle can still have its own issues.
Yes. Baby might not tolerate formula. Well, at first maybe sickier. Might need different formula, doctor advice. Bottle refusal could happen. Test if it's the bottle or the formula by using expressed milk in at first. Baby might take less milk from the bottle than the chart says, maybe mirroring their little and often breastfeeding pattern. Or they might start the bottle okay, but refuse to finish, getting upset. Could be discomfort reflex, less obvious at breast, allergy. Needs doctor check.
Finally, the question of how long should you breastfeed for?
The author shares her personal feeling. Successfully breastfeeding fully until solid start, around 4 months then, maybe 6 months now, is a great achievement. Acknowledges it gets more restrictive for mom after that. Notes there's no conclusive research proving a specific duration. Definitely prevents allergies later. It's complex.
The whole book, this whole approach, it really feels like such a practical, no-nonsense guide through the reality of feeding. Moves right past the perfect Instagram version.
It absolutely does. It
Yeah.
just confronts the challenges head on, doesn't it? Offers real, concrete, problem-solving strategies based on her actual hands-on experience. And it gives you permission. Permission to struggle, permission to use bottles if you need to, without drowning in guilt.
What I found particularly insightful was her relentless focus on technique for breastfeeding. How just adjusting a latch, tweaking positioning can genuinely alleviate pain, improve milk transfer, basically turn a nightmare situation into something manageable.
Yeah, framing things like sore nipples not as some personal failing or biological destiny, but as a solvable problem of technique. That's incredibly empowering for new mothers.
Right. And her willingness to just challenge common anxieties, like the fear that giving one bottle will ruin everything, or her directness about those difficult choices, like sometimes you need to let a baby cry for a short while to settle. It feels authentic, grounded in what she's actually seen work over years.
She trusts her experience, definitely, and she encourages you, the listener, to observe your baby, trust your own instincts too, while still giving you that structured guidance. It's a really good balance, I think. Expert advice, but also acknowledging that you are the expert on your unique child.
Which raises a really interesting question to maybe leave our listeners with after diving into this source. In this world that's just overflowing with parenting information, so much conflicting advice, where do you find that balance between diligently following expert guidance, like the practical steps in this book, and really tuning into and trusting your own gut feeling, your parental intuition about what your specific, unique baby truly needs?
That's a profound question to sit with, isn't it? As you navigate all the complexities of feeding your little one, this deep dive into Claire Byam-Cook's work has certainly given us a lot of practical strategies and insights.
It really has. Hopefully, armed with some of this practical knowledge and the permission to adapt it, you can feel a bit more confident, maybe less anxious, ensuring your baby is fed, happy, thriving, however you manage it.
Remember, you are the ultimate expert on your baby.
And drawing on the author's own encouragement at the end of her book, even if breastfeeding didn't work out the way you hoped this time, please don't see it as a failure. Know that trying again, if you have another baby, is often a completely different experience. Every feeding journey is unique.
Some really supportive final thoughts there from the source material.
Indeed. Well, that wraps up this deep dive. We really hope you found these insights valuable.